Hello, and thank you to everyone for tuning in today. My name is Kristie Rowley, the Director of AI Labs here at Domo, and today we're talking about data-driven decision making, but maybe not in the way you'd expect. We have Jason Harper here, a good friend of mine, and he is going to talk about AI, artificial intelligence, in collaboration with HI, human intelligence. If you know me, you know I'm all about data science. It's what I've studied, practiced, and consulted on and built a team around here at Domo. But for all the hours I've spent immersed in data science, here's what I've learned. The best AI, machine learning, and data science in the world do not make business decisions. People do. Data analysis, and AI inform the actions that people take and the business decisions that people make, but they don't actually make those decisions. This means that both making data-driven decisions is just as much an art as it is a science. Both intuition and data-driven insights play a role in data-driven decision-making. Today, we want to talk about how to strike a productive balance between the art and the science of data-driven decision-making. I'm about to introduce our guests, but a couple of housekeeping notes first. If you have any questions, there is a Q&A window at the right side of your screen. We encourage you to ask questions, and we will do our best to answer them throughout the session. With that, I'm excited to welcome my good friend and collaborator, Jason Harper, Managing Director of RxA at OneMagnify.
Thank you, Kristie. Really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about this fun topic, quite frankly. So I'm Jason, Managing Director of RxA at OneMagnify, as Kristie said. So we are, I believe, still the largest Domo implementation partner. So that's one of the main reasons we get to work together as often as we do. So we help, we help businesses really, get the most out of their data by using Domo. It's one of our main things that we do. We provide the BI, the data engineering, data science support, things like that to help really bring these systems to life. In my role as managing director, I get to work kind of across the board and touch everything. I get to work with all of our clients and all of our people. So it's a really fun position to be in. I've been working with Domo since 2015. So I guess 8-ish years experience there too. So really big fans of that. And beyond that, I've been working in data science for 24 years, which I don't know if I can say that because when I first got started, we just called it statistics, math, and stuff. And so I don't know who hired the PR firm and rebranded us as data scientists and tried to make us cool. I am not, but I appreciate the efforts there. So really enjoyed thinking about, as you said, like this sort of balance of the art and the science of this world that we live in, and look forward to talking about how human intelligence really augments this artificial intelligence that we talk about so much.
Yeah, when we first met to talk about what we want to talk about today, I loved that you kind of coined the phrase HI and AI working together, human intelligence supported by artificial intelligence. Tell me more about how your framework around this for decision making has evolved over time.
Well, I think, for me, across what I've always seen is that we're trying to help people and organizations make better decisions. Like that's the whole point of everything we do. Like, analytics without optimization is pointless. And so it's really driving to better decision making. And we've seen really at every turn, it's where you get the biggest impact and the biggest return on investment is when you get really good data and really good insights, and you have that opportunity to think about it and put on that layer of, whether it's, experience or just your intuitions, actually, I think really matter when you have really good data to help draw and bring that together. And what I see is, recently I was talking with a friend who works in manufacturing, and he was talking about how robotics is helping in manufacturing and actually like and what they're finding is they're using, and I don't know how common this is, but they're putting exoskeletons on people. And so the people are actually sitting underneath a vehicle and they're putting parts in, right? And it's this robotic exoskeleton that's just designed to support their muscles so they can do more work with less fatigue. And it's sort of like, well, that's interesting to me. It's like almost like, yeah, we're making superhumans physically. And I feel like data science in a lot of ways is sort of like that exoskeleton around our decision making, where it's like, oh, you can just make better decisions, stronger and faster with this support. But at the end of the day, there's still this human in the loop making these decisions. And that's whether it's we're analyzing or optimizing a marketing campaign or looking at, you know, other types of financial decisions, things like that. I feel it's always better when we have that sort of that human in the loop artificial intelligence.
So I love talking to people who have been in the data space for a really long time, people like yourself, because I think that early on in data careers, we have different ideas about how data solves problems than we do later on in our career. So could you talk to me about the evolution of how you think about the role of data and the role of intuition in decision making?
Sure, I think one of the things that we've seen. There's several different sort of dimensions here with that. I think um, one of the things that we've seen is that the granularity of decision making that can be made at scale, right? So we're able to use very granular data in very like vast amounts of it, and we're able to process it more quickly. So what I mean is, like, the example would be I've been analyzing advertising campaigns since before Google existed. And we did all of our work like analyzing like goto.com in Excel, right? And so back in the day, we were limited by, I feel like it was like a million rows or something. There was like this limit in Excel, right, of like things that you could do. And then so it really forced sort of like the tools themselves really imposed some level of granularity. And then even still, when you had all of that, it would every time you calculated the cells, it would like crash Excel, right? Like, so things like, so like the tools, like what we were trying to do conceptually, the tools couldn't keep up, right? And so now we've seen over the past two and a half decades is just this, the tools have now pretty much exceeded like at least my what I'm setting out to do. And so I don't feel encumbered at all by the tools, which is great. And so now we have, it's sort of like however whatever you can think of in terms of bringing in sort of like the market conditions, your experience, however many dimensions you want to layer into the analysis, that's practically speaking virtually unlimited. And then now the tools, this isn't new, but for the past probably 10 plus years, give or take, the tools themselves can actually help you figure out what dimensions should be brought into this. And so for me, like the number of decision points and the number of variables that you can include have I think grown, and allowing for us to get very specific or very um, more detailed, I guess, in the outputs. But at the end of the day, it's still coming down to how much of this can be wired up and automatic. So I kind of stick with like the like in marketing examples. Like, we can get very sophisticated now very easily. It doesn't feel sophisticated, but it's very sophisticated on how we target, how we change bids on different things. Like all that magic that's taking place there, very sophisticated. And we can be very controlled with that. Um, but it still requires that sort of like, we're making those decisions at a very granular level, but we're still looking at it as a manager and looking at, okay, is this campaign really, like, are we, what else can we do, right? So there is the concept of like set it and forget it and just let Google or Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever just run wild. Like, that's a disaster, right? Like, no, like it still requires that sort of like looking at it and that human kind of moving the dial a little bit and monitoring it. But what's actually happening now is vastly more granular, and the decisions are being made much more quickly at a much higher scale now than they were 10 years ago and certainly 20 years ago.
So I love this idea that technology has gotten so good that we can really rely on it now. Like it's something that you can rely on. It's something that you can really help you do your work. But I heard in there, you tell me if I got it wrong, three key places where humans are really important in the loop. And the first one is machines don't ask very good questions. So humans should ask the questions of the data. And then we talked about moving the dial. So you've got to tune those models or teach them where you want them to look or how they should be looking at data. And then the third one is actually making decisions about that data. So the machine's not going to tell you what to do. It'll give you an output, but it's not going to tell you what actions to take necessarily. Can you talk about, I want you to talk about all three. I'm fascinated by this. So let's talk about all three. Talk to me about asking good questions, and then let's talking about moving the dial, and then taking action.
So, sure. So I think when I think about asking good questions, it's that part of that comes into humans are able to, like, based on your experience, you can think of things that the computer hasn't seen yet before, right? Obviously, like you're more tend to be more creative, and I think in a very practical example, I'm sure everyone's driven a vehicle that now has at least some level of self-driving, where it's like at least you can set the cruise and it's going to control your speed, right? But you can also, like, it's going to do that, and it's going to lay the car in front of you and it knows to brake. But you can look at the car in the other lane and realize, even though they don't have their turn signal on, you can look at them and go, they're going to come over in my lane. Like, I know it, right? Like, but there's like the data you're using to process that, the computer in your car isn't looking for, right? But you can look at that and so you're going to give yourself more space because they're coming in whether or not you give them the space, right? There's just the stuff where you can feel it almost, right? And so for me, it's that sort of like, there are things that are taking place that aren't directly measurable by the machines, right? So the machine learning applications that you set up, there is, whether it feels that way, there's a framework in place there that they're living in, right? And they can only live within that framework. And people aren't necessarily bound by that framework. Like, it's that human intelligence that sort of goes beyond that can anticipate things or come up with scenarios that haven't been thought of before, and then apply that. Like, you can take that and think like, oh, let's test that, or oh, let's look at this, or oh, let's make sure we're looking at these new things, or I wonder if that's going to happen next quarter, right? Because there may just be little bits of information that you're bringing to the table that's going to help you, just you're thinking differently than a machine's going to think at the state.
So one of the things I love about what you're saying is I think there are really big implications for how you hire around data jobs. Because really advanced machines are going to change the way that we hire individuals. We actually don't want people who can plug things into an Excel spreadsheet. Yes, it's nice if you can write an algorithm, but we actually want people who can interpret and take action. And one of the things that you're highlighting here is creativity. We want humans, those humans that are in the loop, we want them to be really creative, and we want them to know their line of business really, really well. And machines aren't going to make up for that expertise. How do you feel like your expertise has grown over time, and how that may or may not have changed your reliance on data?
Experience is just something that it's very difficult to learn. It's something that you just have to be exposed to, and it's one of those things that's frustrating as someone like myself, and like probably like you, is that, like, we just want to just, I don't know, keep building this experience and keep building on our expertise. I don't often like to refer to myself in any way, shape, or form as an expert, but you said it. So it's that, like, you had, like, for us, like, so we've had, at RxA, we've been super lucky. We've had hundreds, probably in the thousands now, of customers and different experiences with them. And so it's like, you learn how Ford works working with Ford and things that happen in manufacturing and things that happen in, automotive. And then we learn how things work with like Muji Farms and how growing strawberries works and what it means to get cucumbers into Costco and all the little things in there. And it's like, I just spent some time yesterday with someone who runs a construction company and like really thinking about how their bid process works. And if they don't get the membrane right in the estimate, or they pick a membrane roof versus a steel roof or what, like massive disasters unfold in the bid process because there's this whole, so it's sort of like how thinking about these different real world things and just that real world application of decision making and the implications of that and the sometimes unintended consequences, super powerful. Like for me, whenever I'm talking to folks who've made some decisions and then there were unintended consequences, that to me is like I remember a lot of that. Like that's like, oh yeah, because it's like I don't want to mess that up, and then I want to be able to like hold that in some way. And so, talking to, the company with the roofing example where they bid out a contract and then they were bound by law because it was a government contract and they had to fulfill it and they lost millions of dollars fulfilling it and there was nothing they could do about it. And so then there's all these reasons and it's bonding and all this stuff. It's fascinating, right? But now I have that. It's like, okay, cool. I got to think about that. I think about how that now applies in other places where we're making estimates and implications and just little things like that. So for me, it's as I go through, it's like with each of these different industries that you work with, or each of the different, even personality types, just different people and how people think and process it. Like it's all kind of building this kind of decision-making tapestry that then gets applied when I'm looking at, the business decisions that we've applied like a machine learning application to. We've done some level of rigor with like data analysis. It's driving relationships. It's like just still thinking about, I guess simply put, one of the things I think about is just what's missing. What did we miss? Right. And so like having that as an orientation of like, okay, we gave it everything. What did we miss?
So I love that. Back to this idea that when you have algorithms, when you have an AI in place, you kind of turn the dial and fine tune things a little bit. And that's something that a human in the loop can absolutely do. One of the things that struck me in my 25 years of working with customers and doing data science solutions for customers is that there are often two types of customers. The first one might be perhaps a younger generation with a little less experience. And the idea often from them is, well, the algorithm is going to tell us what we need to know. And then we have some more experienced folks that are like, well, when we twist the dial, when we turn the dial on that, what I want to do is infuse business logic into how we use the AI. And that sounds like what you're talking about. Like we're twisting the dial, but what we're really doing is we're infusing business logic and helping the machine understand some of the complexities of how our business runs and what our secret sauce is and how we operate. Can you tell me how that might have influenced you as you founded and ran forward with RxA? How you balance that art and science as you move forward with the process to found RxA and drive it into a very successful consulting business?
Sure. I mean, well, I think I heard a couple of things there. So maybe like I'll answer this in two dimensions. So one, we think about like turning the dials and like really getting into like how we make decisions around uh, optimizing or fine tuning, like with the more of the data science mindset. One of the things that I think about there is like checking assumptions. And so when you transition, for me, like out of academics, like working with like, I'm a classically trained economist and, did a lot of my master's degree in econometrics and stuff like that. And like, it was all about like, here's our assumptions and then we build our model. And then when you get out in the real world, it's like those assumptions are oftentimes just broken, right? And you like, yeah, if I could assume this, then this is the answer. And it's like, well, yeah, but you can't assume that. Like, that doesn't work. The world isn't that neat and clean, right? And
it's
so
great
like,
for a simulation, right? And that's it. That's all.
Yeah, like right, like it helped me write my master's thesis, right? But like the reality is the hospital system that I built this for in Miami, yeah, it's not really going to work, right? But I got an A, great, because I made this one assumption. And so like but when we're in that real world, like thinking about what assumptions are we making in this, and what assumptions have we put into the model that are then in the framework. And oftentimes we don't realize what those assumptions are, right? And again, it kind of goes back to that, what's missing, what did I miss, right? And like making sure that we're thinking about um, that you know those assumptions and that. And I think kind of second, sort of like how RXA had come to be. And my assumption there was like, okay, I can go sell consulting work. So when I quit my job and started that company, it was really sort of founded on the there's like the personal principles of like, well, let's see let's see what happens. And I assumed that I could get out there and actually sell services and start a business. And so, with that, the frameworks that I carried with me that I feel are super important is sort of like when we're working with organizations, it's beginning with the ultimate like end in mind for the organization or the person that I'm speaking to. So it's sort of like, well, an example is we're working with an energy company here in Michigan, and they sell the gas and electric utility. And so they wanted to measure. They came to me and said, "Hey, can you help me measure awareness of an ad campaign we're running?" And it was like, "Okay, great, yeah, we can help you measure that impact." And it's sort of like, "Okay, you're measuring this awareness, right?" They're like, "Yes, we need to know awareness of this new product, or AKA a different rate, right?" And it's like, "Well, why do you want? Okay, let me help you. Let's kind of walk through these steps to figure out like why are you acting like." Does the gas company care if people know about the rate? They're going to have to pay it anyways. Like, what's the real care here? And so, working with them to figure out, or with their marketing team to figure out why we even care about that KPI, it's really about like, hey, do people actually change behavior? Do people use less energy because of this rate? Because the rate's variable throughout the day. And can we actually get people? And then it's like, okay, why is that important? Kind of going through that step of like getting to why it's important, right? And it's not important just because we want people to change energy patterns. It's important because the utility has to have a certain level of output that's measured on like 4 days a year. And if they can get that consumption down on just those 4 days a year, then their new energy requirements set forth by the state are lower. And if they can get it to a certain threshold, they could close a power plant and save $1.5 billion a year. And it's like, oh, okay, so this ad campaign awareness is actually trying to, generate, 1.5 billion in savings for the company. And so like for me, it's like making sure like, okay, helping when we're applying like, data science, it's to me making sure, and this is sort of like the how I think RxA became successful, is we always kind of like would take like the more holistic view and then still make sure that we delivered on, yeah, in this little stack, like here's your awareness of the campaign, here's consumer changes in behavior, here's peak power consumption on these days, and here it is relative to the threshold we needed to get to, right? So helping make sure that, yeah, this little ad campaign that they're running and spending a few hundred grand on, is it delivering 1.5 billion in value, right? And so like that's sort of like the the secret to our success is not just listening to what the first question was, but trying to get to like what's the real, how big, like what are we really trying to do here, and focusing on that. So I got a little rambly, sorry, Kristie.
So I've heard you say before that intuition provides context and data provides clarity. And I think that's a perfect example of how that works out. I also know that you've developed a decision framework that you use to help people strike a balance between um, intuition and data. Would you care to share it with us?
Yeah, Christy, sure. No, I'd love to share. We've developed, sort of this human insight plus artificial intelligence kind of framework. if you will. And we've got I got a couple slides I can share with that. So it's really about thinking about that complementary relationship between intuition and data. So it is sort of like this intuition. Often it really comes from that experience, understanding of like a market, and then that's helping provide that context for those decisions that we talked about. And then it's data still backing that up. So you want to make sure that as you're, kind of trusting your gut and testing your gut, you're kind of validating and verifying, using this evidence-based insights to help guide that decision making. So it is these two things working harmoniously. And it's that, these things work together with this human insight, data-driven analytics naturally produces this iterative process. So it's you're using data, it's informing your insights, you're using your insights to inform the types of things you're looking at. And when things come back unexpected, that then triggers a response. So you're thinking like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Let's test this. Oh, okay, that's interesting. Let's test this. Or, oh, that didn't work, right? Because in this field that we're in, we're dealing with probabilities, right? And so if you do something, and even if it has an 80% chance of coming true, you're going to do 10 things, in a period of time, and two of them aren't going to work how you expected. And so it's taking that feedback loop and working together with these things. And it's that, we would say humans have a really unique ability. They can perceive and interpret complex relationships. And oftentimes you don't even realize how much of this is taking place in your brain, right? And so it sometimes doesn't, you don't even feel it, but you're making these connections, and you're explaining the world around you in a way that's based on this. And especially in OneMagnify's world, where our OneMagnify is really focused on customer marketing in that space. It's really understanding like this consumer behavior is often the things that we're looking at. So like it's that market experience that helps us with that. And so the you're kind of laying this out here. It's sort of like this data-driven analytics and human judgment, right? So it's that statistics and patterns and correlations and large data that you can't hold all in your head, with this human judgment that's helping that intuition coming together in this sort of like kind of really, synergistic way. We've talked through a few of these different examples, so we won't dive into that. But this process, right? So it's this iterative decision-making cycle. So it's hypotheses, testing, learning, refining, right? Then adapting it. So letting folks actually deploy these. And one of the benefits now that we didn't really have maybe even 15 years ago, but over the last 10 years or so, like the speed with which we can test things. So we have all this power to test really big things in the way that a lot of marketing campaigns work, or even financial decisions work. Like we get near real-time impact, right? And you can see and build data back very quickly because we're able to make things at a very granular level. The speed with which we can actually get results and make changes is there. So we can test a lot of things. We get feedback really quickly. Like this product launch example is a great example of where you can really test and move things. I think, the product launch, Kristie, just back, I don't know, this was 2010-ish. I helped launch the new Dodge Ram at the time. It was hundreds of millions of dollars spent in the launch, and we were analyzing everything. We were using all the web data we had, internet data, to help us measure how's the TV campaign working. And this is back before streaming, so these were completely separate data sources, and the TV campaigns were running with just standard, like, we get data a month later on like what ran and what was our TRPs and all this stuff. And then we're using what we could siphon off of like consumer behavioral data online to figure out, hey, were these ad campaigns running effectively? Is our messaging right, and all of that. And so is this like really abstract way of connecting these things to, is it working, right? And so at the time, we were able to make some changes, like, weeks or into like a month or two into the campaign and really shift stuff. And that was earth shattering. It got me in the Wall Street Journal. It was like super impressive and everyone's super excited. And I still have a copy of it because that was neat. But, now how it's a joke, like, no, you need to be getting this data back faster. Everything's connected and making those decisions and things are happening in near real time. And that's where, um, that's one of the most exciting parts to all of this is that like you can see really quickly and it lets you take more risks because you can make more decisions more quickly, and I think it allows for it's almost like part of the argument can be made that it's like, oh, should just then you just automate everything and test everything and just let the machine run it itself. But actually, I think because of how quickly you're able to actually make decisions and see results, it allows for that human to come in and try things that maybe are outside of the framework to see if we can actually do things differently, because the risk is actually a little bit lower because you can flip it back a little bit faster, if that makes sense.
So, one of the things that I loved about your slides is it was reminiscent of the scientific method. And I think what you're saying here is, well, with the advent of better machines, you can iterate faster through the scientific method. So you can run more experiments, you can test faster, but you still have to have the scientists to do it all. So I love that. I think that's really great. We're running up on time. I've enjoyed this so much. Just a few closing questions for you. What top three things do you want listeners to take away from this today?
Well, the number one thing is AI is not replacing anyone. I feel like it empowers us. So I look at, I would say it's that human in the loop, right? Whenever we're making these decision processes, analyzing anything, like it's that human intelligence plus artificial intelligence is going to yield the best results. Like that's number one. And I look at AI. I'm kind of I chase the shiny objects, and currently it's this exoskeleton metaphor that I have stuck in my head because Jess told me about that. I'm like, wow, that makes so much sense, right? So it's like just really thinking about how this is gonna, just augment you as a data scientist, augment me as a data scientist, like just helping, really enable that as the but not replace, right? It's enablement, it's support, it's growth of the human component of this. I don't know if that was just two or if that was like six things, but that's what like.
I like it. I like it. Um, what advice would you give someone who is trying to infuse AI into their business workflow, and how would they make sure the right humans were in the loop on that workflow?
So number one, trust your gut. So when you're talking about hiring folks, like if you're not a data scientist or if you're a business analyst or a business manager, so trust your gut. So like when you're working with a data scientist, um, you should be able to trust them, right? And so what you see is um, there's great data scientists, and then there's data scientists who work great in a lab, right? And so for me, like in the business world, we're making business decisions. We need someone who can communicate what they're doing well to the folks around them and be a fun, like it's the standard, like those standard rules of hiring and building a team apply. Like you need to be able to have somebody who fits your business culture, all of that. And then as far as like the actual skills, right, like that's like you need to obviously, like you need to make sure that they have data science skills, and so there's various ways to do that, in that. But I think it's really the more critical part is making sure that the folks that are doing this work for you, um, you can trust, because you have to understand uh, you have to understand and trust the results that they're giving, because if you don't, you're going to be less likely to use them. And also, like, I think, you mentioned, like the dirty little secret of data science is that it's more of an art. And to me, what that means also is that it's a little messy. And so oftentimes the data scientist is doing some cleanup work, or things are missing, or things aren't working quite right. You want to make sure that they're communicating that. with the team around them and you, so that when you're making decisions, you know what the assumptions are, you know where there's potential risks, because you don't have perfect information, you don't have perfect data, and there's risks to deploying these things. And so making sure that you've got resources in there they're going to have that are thinking about it from the business perspective, right? It's not about getting a model that's complicated and pretty. It's about driving the business forward and understanding, like what the business as a whole needs. And I get just one, if I can just click on that for just a second, the when you talk to data scientists or folks who are going to be doing this type of work, you can get from them, are they thinking about the business as a whole? Right? Like if I'm Kraft and I'm thinking about like couponing strategies, like what is a data scientist thinking about a human being at the point of sale, like, or at the point of decision making, like, are they going to buy my product or a competitor's product, and is that coupon going to make that like, are they thinking about that, like there's a human making, like, buying my product or not, or are they thinking about math, right? And it's like the folks who are thinking about math, for me, like, scientific research land, a great place for that. The folks that are thinking about the human at the grocery store who has, children, and maybe one of them's a little sick, and we're trying to like help them in their situation, like, that's the type of data scientist that I find that I want to work with, and I want working on my business.
Yeah, at least for these business-driven decision-making applications, I think data scientists working in a vacuum are probably the most dangerous ones. So I love how you've highlighted the context there. Jason, this has been such an amazing conversation. I can't thank you enough for sharing your experiences and your perspectives today. If you want to learn about how Domo can help you embrace both data science as an art and a science, please click the schedule demo button and we can set up a tailored demo just for your unique needs. Also, be sure to check out the valuable resources linked right under the Q&A window. We could not be more excited to share the power of Domo with you and your teams, Domo really does enable us to do the sorts of things that Jason talked about today. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a great rest of your day.